The little trip my wife and I took recently from Kerrang to Port Lincoln in Adelaide, about 1200 k's each way, 2400k round trip. It was the first big trip we'd done on the bike since we put the sidecar on. So it was good to get out and about. The route we'd take would be from Kerrang, follow the Murray River through to Mildura, then across to Renmark, and then follow the river again down to Morgan, turn right into the lofty ranges up to Burra, then drop down from Burra to Port Augusta. This is Renmark, which is one of the first towns across the border. It's on the Murray, very nice little town. There's a lot of irrigation in the area, mainly orchards and vineyards, but it dries out the further you go. There's a lot of these ferries crossing the river at various towns along the route. They're a good thing to do. It's a bit of a novelty. They run 24 hours a day, 2 12-hour shifts. This particular ferry operator was very interested in the Indian and the sidecar.
Hello.
He loved the idea that they were still making Indians. We had a good chat while we were sitting crossing the ferry. All types of vehicles use the ferries, including semi-trailers, caravans and cars. There is a lot of grey nomads travelling through the Murray on the Murray Valley Highway. It is quite touristy. The towns along the way, particularly along the South Australian side of the Murray, are all quite historic, and they're built out of local stones, with a lot of historic buildings.
Thank you.
So they're all worth a visit and have a look around. From Morgan we went across to Burra, and this is typical of the landscape along the way. About just over 100 k's of open sheep stations type country. All along the rain followed us. Had a few little showers, but not too bad. It was the middle of July, so you've got to expect that in the middle of winter. Coming into Burra, it's a really nice little town, very historic. It's in the lofty ranges, which is undulating farmland. We stayed at Paxton Cottages, which were renovated old miners' accommodation, and they were very nice. There's a lot to see and do, and Burra's a good place to base yourself if you want to go and do loops of the lofty ranges. The next day we went on to Port Augusta. We followed the pipeline nearly all the way. This is a water pipeline. South Australia doesn't have a lot of permanent rivers, so the water is piped from town to town, and this pipeline runs all the way through to Port Lincoln. Along the way I had to organise to get the front tyre replaced. I got on to Harley Davidson in Mildura, who did it while we waited, just running low on tread, so we were due for a new tyre and they did it on our way back. This is travelling through to Port Augusta. Again, you're following the coast with a lot of little port and seaside villages along the way. Port Augusta is one of 3 mining towns, or what they call the Iron Triangle. It's a port that services the mining industry in the area. They're all quite industrial, these towns. This is where we stayed. It's quite nice. The following day, we got up and got on the way to Port Lincoln. The sun was shining and had a pretty good run. These windmills and generators are quite common along the way. This landscape is typical of what you see going from Port Augusta through to Whyalla. Whyalla is another one of those iron towns, an industrial town, quite large to service the mining industry. The coastline from Whyalla down to Port Lincoln is really very beautiful. White sandy beaches, and there's a series of little towns along the way that are all worth a visit. Places like Cowell, Port Neal, Arno Bay, Tumby Bay. Particularly Arno Bay and Tumby Bay are both very, very attractive places with a lot of new development going on, beautiful marinas, and a really good lifestyle. It is quite remote. It's a long way to travel back to Adelaide by road. So a lot of these people down here tend to fly from Port Lincoln through to Adelaide if they need to do anything. And the people we spoke to said that a lot of them actually keep cars in Adelaide so that they can travel when they get there. It's cheaper to fly between Port Lincoln and Adelaide than it is to drive, and it's certainly a lot quicker. But once you realise this, it makes a lot of these little towns like Tumby Bay and Arno Bay very attractive places to live. The foreshores are very well kept, they're quiet, the white sandy beaches are just magnificent, and you can see why a lot of people are choosing to settle in this area. As you move closer to Port Lincoln, the landscape changes again and becomes more fertile. A lot of cropping going on near Port Lincoln. This is coming into Port Lincoln. And some shots along the way. Whyalla once again. Looking back at the smelters. And then at Port Lincoln, which is it's the base for a very large tuna farming operation. This is one of the boats coming in, 20 tonnes they bring in daily. This is the statue of Makybe Diva, a very famous racehorse who won 3 Melbourne Cups. She was owned by Tony Santing, a tuna farmer from Port Lincoln. Another sculpture on the foreshore in Port Lincoln. One of the features of Port Lincoln was the Line and Label restaurant. We went out there for a special meal and it really was excellent. Great place to visit if you can while you're down in Port Lincoln. Port Lincoln itself is a very, very accessible town. Everything you need is there. We had a great time while we stayed. And we look forward to going back in the future, probably spending more time down there. The bike ran beautifully. The Indian Roadmaster is just a great thing to hook a sidecar to. It does it effortlessly. They really are a beautiful touring motorcycle. We'll see you next time.